A gang of aggressive motorcyclists targeted a 72-year-old veteran who owned a little coffee kiosk by the side of the road in a sleepy Horizon Ridge where respect had all but disappeared. Unbeknownst to them, they were on the brink of starting a losing war that would alter the course of not only their own lives but the entire town. This is the account of how Frank Harper, a former recon for the Marine Force, demonstrated to a group of troublemakers that genuine power does not reside in coercion but in uniting individuals. Excuse me. Please subscribe if you found this tale compelling and let us know where you're watching from in the comments section before we start. Something much more thrilling is in store for you tomorrow. As Frank Harper dusted down the aged wooden counter of his coffee stand, the morning mist lingered to the mountains. For 15 years, customers had been drawn to his little shop by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the refreshing mountain air. His years of discipline in Marine Force recon allowed him to move with an efficiency that belied his deliberateness. Salutations, Mr. Harper. As she pedaled past, Jenny Parker, a high school girl from the area, shouted. Later on, Mom promises to bring more banana bread. Jenny, make sure she knows there's free coffee in the house whenever she arrives. Calling out again, Frank grinned as he watched the adolescent pedal away. He was more than simply a vendor to the regulars at his booth. It represented the soul of the town. At precisely 6:15 in the morning, Mrs. Henderson arrived in her weathered station wagon. She hadn't skipped a morning in 15 years, and she had been his first customer when he established the stand. Frank as usual. With her thermal mug extended, she inquired. Perhaps even one of Elaine's cinnamon rolls. On my way up there, Helen. Where is the flower shop at the moment? It is as you are aware. Things are slower than they were, but we still get by. By the way, have you heard about the motorcycles causing trouble in River Creek? It has to do with management. As he poured her coffee, Frank's hands momentarily paused. I'm not sure I have. What sort of issue is this? Poor quality. They have been pressuring small firms to pay protection money. The vandals forced poor Tom to shut down his hardware store. Without evidence, the police claim they are powerless. Things are changing, Frank whispered. Still, Mrs. Henderson looked up from her coffee as a result of the gravity in his voice. Mind your step, Frank. Rumor has it that these bikers aren't your typical kind. Members of this group identify as the Scarlet Serpents. Absolute whack jobs. While thinking about a time when he had to deal with dangers much worse than the local troublemakers, Frank nodded. Helen, there are a lot of people in the world who confuse fear with respect. Nothing ever works out for them. Frank retrieved a tiny business card that he had preserved for decades as Mrs. Henderson drove away. He then reached under his counter, past the guest book that contained letters from appreciative clients, and touched it. Just one phone number was printed on it. A link to brothers who knew that removing your uniform doesn't always mean victory. Calmness persisted throughout the morning. He is famed for his Warriors Wake Up brew, which truckers stop for. Tourists sought directions, while locals gossiped and shared news. Frank's coffee kiosk, situated snugly on a bend of Mountain View Road, has become an inviting sight for all passers-by. The quiet routine was disrupted around mid-morning. The low, steady rumble, which had begun as a whisper of thunder, soon overwhelmed the soft mountain wind. A group of 6 motorbikes emerged from the shadows, their chrome reflecting the sunshine with an angry glare. Frank observed as his present patrons, a mother of 2 young children and an elderly truck driver, carelessly drank their beverages and departed, avoiding making eye contact with the strangers. With their formation practiced but looking sloppy to Frank's trained eye, the motorcycles drove onto the gravel parking lot. The leader of the group dismounted first. He was a towering man adorned with a red cobra symbol on his leather vest. As he made his way to the stand, a mock scowl etched on his face, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Nice little setup you got here, old-timer," he remarked, his voice betraying the predator's playful attitude toward its prey. Frank calmly replied, "Coffee is $4. He then proceeded to wipe off the previously spotless counter. As the noise reverberated off the mountainside, the biker commander chuckled and offered free coffee to veterans. "Hey there, I'm Fong, and we aren't having coffee, Dad. Your new protection cost is our topic of discussion today. You see, this route is now home to red serpents, and our insurance is essential for businesses." While the other riders made clumsy attempts at positioning themselves tactically, Frank observed the man in front of him. "The men and women in uniform who patrol these routes already provide the necessary protection for this stand, my son." Insects' faces turned black. As he smeared the frosting on Elaine's freshly baked cakes, one of his guys knocked down a stack of cups. "Old man, I want to be quite clear." Leaning over the counter, Fong let out a low growl. "There are several hazardous curves on this mountain route, and you need to reach 500 per week before accidents begin." After setting down his cleaning cloth, Frank locked eyes with Fong. Upon recognizing something in the veteran's eyes, the younger man trembled uncontrollably. Rather than inspiring dread, true power comes from confronting it head-on. "Listen closely," Frank said, his voice betraying the quiet power of a man who had led men in battle. "To better serve this community, this stand opens every morning. It will remain here tomorrow just as it has for the past 15 years. Either place your coffee order or proceed." With a clenched fist, Fong smashed one of Elaine's cinnamon pastries. "No, that's incorrect. We'll be right back tonight to show you the ropes. Perhaps we might begin with the flag of which you appear so proud." Frank retrieved the business card from beneath his counter as the motorcyclists sped off. The group's members were all veterans of different wars and conflicts and were members of the Veterans Motorcycle Association. "Brotherhood never ends" was the simple message on the card that they sent to Frank because he had assisted their founder through a particularly difficult time after Vietnam. Observing the shattered remnants of Elaine's cinnamon roll, Frank couldn't help but crack a little smile, recalling a comment made by his former CO. When bullying someone, picking the wrong target is often the worst decision a bully can make. After getting out of his car, he dialed the number. A rough voice, "Max," replied after 2 rings. "Frank Harper here, commanding Force Recon from 67 to 73, and I hope you'll finally reciprocate that favor you extended to me, Mac." The Scarlet Serpents were in for a rude awakening when it came to the distinction between intimidating and dominating an audience. Mac's once harsh voice became more subdued as he recognized Falstaff, the Falstaff of the Quezon siege. "Listen, my brother, I've been anticipating this call for the past 15 years ago. Mac, I never imagined I'd have to make it, but I guess folks need a little nudge in the right direction when it comes to respect. Interact with me, Frank. How is it going?" The events of the morning were described by Frank. He spoke calmly as he detailed the dangers posed by the Scarlet Serpents. Meanwhile, Mac remained silently receptive, and Frank could discern his breath becoming more labored with each new detail. "Were you flagged down?" A steely voice had taken over Mac's. "Do you mean Mountain View Road is where your stand is? Just 2 hours, please. Moreover, Frank, remain where you are. The whole family is going to be there." Unusual tension persisted for the remainder of the morning. Customers who frequented Frank's coffee shop observed a shift in his mood, even though he continued to pour coffee with the same steady hand. His daughter Elaine brought a new batch of cinnamon pastries and showed up at about 11 o'clock. Still resting on the counter, she beheld the crumbled pastry. "Hey, what just happened?" Frank wanted to reassure her that there was only a misunderstanding with new consumers. "Is Tommy thriving academically?" It was just like his old command voice, "Dad." Elaine's tone was just like his. "Those eyes, I recognize them. Last year, when the drug traffickers attempted to set up shop outside Tommy's school, you had the same one. What is the true situation?" Just as Frank was about to respond, the faraway sound of motorbikes reverberated over the mountains. Frank put a soothing touch on Elaine's shoulder as she tightened up. A small smile gracing his face, he assured her that everything would be alright. Those motorcycles are different from the ones we saw earlier. As the corner was turned, 3 motorbikes with riders behaving with military precision emerged. An immaculate Harley-Davidson, serving as the lead bike, drew up alongside the stand. A tall woman named Ryder, whose silver hair is tightly braided, dismounted with the grace of an experienced rider. A patch bearing the words, "Iron Mom, Desert Storm," adorned her leather vest. As she walked up to the platform and saluted sharply, Colonel Elaine Martinez announced her retirement. To gauge the situation, Max dispatched us ahead. The rest of the family is approximately 1 hour away. The salute was returned by Frank. "No problem, General. Not going to miss it." According to Max, your brew helped him get through some sleepless nights following Nam. Her gaze shifted to Elaine. "Frank must have a daughter named you. It was in 1969 when your dad rescued Max." Refrains from discussing any other topics during our discussions. "Do you mean gatherings?" Elaine glanced over their shoulders. "My father, what is happening?" A steely grin concealed the true nature of Iron Mom's smile. "The Veterans Motorcycle Association is who we are. From the time he helped found it, your father has been an unsung guardian member. We are going to do the opposite today." With relaxed but deliberate motions, the other 2 motorcyclists had positioned themselves at opposite ends of the parking lot. Similar vests adorned with campaign ribbons and military patches were worn by both. "Mike, come on down to River Creek," Iron Mom yelled. "View the hardware store that Tom owns. Pete, please ascend to the vantage point. Please inform me when our visitors will be back." Her father's arm was seized by Elaine. "Which attendees?" "Dad, you're terrifying me. Some lawbreakers in the area believe they can blackmail companies along this road into paying protection money." Frank clarified in a soft but authoritative voice. "Before making their pitch, they dropped by this morning. Dissatisfied with my reply. The Red Snakes." Elaine flushed. "They pose a threat, Dad. They ransacked Tom's shop. Across the county, they have been intimidating businesses." It wasn't a cute sound, but Iron Mom laughed. "Your dad, ma'am, used a K-bar knife and his grit to defeat a whole NVA battalion. These so-called warriors. What really dangerous looks like is about to hit them." Crackle beam asterisk from Iron Mom's vest went the radio. "Our colonel, there is someone coming. It seems like our pals were dying to get together tonight. There are 12 bikes going quickly. On time," Iron Mom grinned. "Has your daughter found a place where she can be protected, Frank?" Elaine firmly stated her intention to remain. "Our stand, the stand of my father, is this." In his daughter, Frank saw the resoluteness that had been displayed by her mother so long ago. He informed Iron Mom that she remains. "Harper's isn't a racer." The growl of motorbikes drawing near became more audible. Turning to Frank, Iron Mom muttered softly into her radio. "About 15 minutes away is the main force. Will we be able to hold their attention for that long?" "Won't have to," Frank said, once again reaching behind the counter. On this occasion, he retrieved a vintage photograph that was meticulously kept despite its damaged edges. The truth can be just as effective as a firearm at times. Roaring into the parking area, the Scarlet Serpents formed a ragged semicircle around the stand with their bikes. Upon seeing the 3 seasoned riders, Fong dismounted first, his expression contorted with rage. "Old man, you brought some buddies," he said with a sneer. "This is still our area, therefore it won't help." Across the parking lot, Iron Mom's voice echoed as she rose to her feet. "The sole parcel of land here was purchased with the blood of brave warriors, my son, and you will never measure up." Iron Mom's voice abruptly halted Fong's advance toward his vest. "2 of the best snipers I've ever led are keeping tabs on you, so I wouldn't recommend it. They learned precision in Afghanistan and patience in Desert Storm." Fong growled, "You're bluffing," but then his hand slipped from his vest. From the counter, Frank took the picture. "I think you need to have a look at something, Rex, before we go on with this conversation." "How do you know that name?" Fong said, his face turning white. "Reason being, I was a soldier with your dad in Quezon, James Dawson," and Frank waved the picture as proof. "In the entire darn Corps, the best radio operator. Prevented a mortar attack before he took his own life 3 times. In his final remarks, he brought up you. He begged me to teach his son the meaning of strength so that he might grow up knowing it." There was total stillness in the parking lot. Rex, the Fong, trembled with fear as he gazed at the picture and saw his father's youthful face among the Marines. "What you're saying is not true," he muttered. His voice, however, lacked conviction. Frank went on to say that your birth date was engraved on a silver lighter that belonged to your father. Sharing the strength it brought him from knowing he had a son waiting for him at home, he proudly displayed it to everyone in the unit. A tarnished silver lighter was pulled out of Rex's vest by his shaky hands. It was a perfect match. "You did what?" He sounded trembling. "He managed it somehow. Defend the evacuation of our unit by dying. To ensure that everyone escaped, he remained on that radio until the very end. Genuine power, Rex, not this facade you've been exhibiting." The familiar roar of motorbikes resounded, but with a new twist. Countless motorcycles materialized from both sides. The rider's vest is adorned with campaign ribbons and military patches. A sizable contingent of the Veterans Motorcycle Association had shown up. The true victory had already been gained, though, as Frank beheld the expression on Rex's face. The use of force isn't always the most effective means of combating hatred. It's the unvarnished truth regarding our true nature and our destiny. As other veteran bikes pulled into the parking lot, Rex Dawson, who his group called Fong, remained motionless, the silver lighter shaking in his hands. It was eye-catching how different. The Scarlet Serpents, who present themselves as tough guys, are on one side. They were, on the other hand, genuine fighters with nothing to prove. Throughout his 3 trips, your father used that lighter. Frank went on, speaking in a soft but authoritative tone. He would refer to that date and share anecdotes about his little kid back home whenever times were tough. To the point that he hoped you would have a lifelong appreciation for personal integrity. Mac's massive Harley advanced to the lead. The founder of VMA got off his horse and walked over to Frank, his aged face suddenly lighting up with a loving smile. Mac turned to confront Rex after they embraced like brothers. "I made it home because of your dad," Max remarked. "Never met a braver guy than Jimmy, your father, who rushed through enemy fire to reach me when I was pinned down and radioed for air support while dragging me back." Uncomfortably, Rex's gang members glanced between their boss and the expanding group of veterans. An anxious rider, who was younger and had a tattoo of a serpent on his neck, nervously cranked his engine. Iron Mom ordered the child to turn it off. "Be respectful. This is sacred ground, and you are standing on it." With the picture remaining in his grasp, Frank made his way around his counter. "Rex, your father gave his life defending others. Everyone here, Mac, myself, and hundreds more, are men. Because of him, we are alive. In what ways do you remember his sacrifice? Through the intimidation of local companies? By using threats against long-serving veterans?" The words, "I didn't know," were murmured by Rex. Everything about his tough man image had gone, and Frank could see nothing more than a father searching for his son. "I never understood the backstory, but after Mom passed away, I uncovered the lighter side among her belongings." Frank nodded, acknowledging the strength of your mother. "Mary Dawson used to send cookies and letters to everyone in the unit. Other sons, she referred to us as her men." A stream of tears started to trickle down Rex's cheek. Along with them, the last vestiges of Fong's veneer disappeared. His gang members appeared more and more uneasy, their forms dissolving in the presence of the senior bikers. Across the parking lot, Iron Mom's voice echoed as she rose to her feet. Guys, today isn't about getting even. There's a difference between being powerful and just being tough, and this is all about remembering and respecting that. All of a sudden, the young motorcyclist with the snake tattoo turned off his bike. "I'm out," he said to his employer. "A Marine was my grandpa. Tell him what we've been up to, and he'll kick my behind." Looking over the assembled veterans, he spoke. "Every one of you, I apologize. I didn't sign up for this." Other Cobra members started to withdraw one by one. Under the scrutiny of actual combatants, their artificial hardness crumbles. Still fixated on the portrait of his father, Rex remained Frank's undivided attention. "Like you," he smiled, Frank said. "Just as funny." He would break out in a wide grin whenever your mom would write him a letter updating him on you. An American patriot and a happy father. Mac drew forward, his words soft. "River Creek is home to our chapter house. There are twice-weekly meetings for veterans. Relate to one another, lend a hand. On our wall of heroes, you can see photographs of your father. It could be about time you dropped by to hear some anecdotes about him. Discover his true identity." A new cup of coffee was brought out from behind the counter by Elaine, who had been quietly observing. It was extended to Rex by her. When asked about the residents, she mentioned that her dad usually claims that family enjoys better coffee. Rex shook hands as he accepted the cup. All of a sudden, he mentioned the hardware store. "We ruined Tom's place. It is imperative that we rectify that." Iron Mom nodded her head in agreement. "That being said, it is an excellent beginning. The true test of our strength is in our ability to admit when we're wrong and make amends." After previously speaking out, the young motorcyclist now took the lead. "I'm handy with tools and have experience in the building industry. Let me help you rebuild before this happens." A smile spread across Max's face. The VMAs created a program to help those in need. Benefit service members and their families. "Is anyone willing to help out Tom?" Additional members of Cobra started nodding. A more authentic approach took the place of the tough guy persona. "I feel both shame and hope." They could see the metamorphosis taking place in real time. "The idea of second chances was important to your father," Frank informed Rex. "Claimed that everyone should get a second chance at making amends. I want to know, how will you put yours to use?" After what seemed like an eternity, Rex lifted his gaze from the snapshot, his eyes finally focusing. "Could you provide me additional details about him, like how he truly was?" Frank said it was better than that. "Do you see all these people over here? Each one tells a different tale of James Dawson, his bravery, his devotion, and his love for his loved ones. Yo, son, get a seat, I've got hot coffee and free stories." Everything had changed in the parking lot as far as tension was concerned. Whenever intimidation and threats were present, there was a new development. Acknowledgement, reverence, and perhaps even the first steps toward recovery. Some of the veterans were sent by Iron Mom to check on other companies when she started grouping them. Serpents had scared people into beginning renovation plans for the hardware business. Disarmed of their pretense, the surviving Cobra members were confronted by survivors of actual conflicts who had grown stronger as a result. As Rex sat down at the counter, still clutching the silver lighter, Frank brought up something your father had told him. "Being strong doesn't mean you have to instill fear in other people. Being someone other people can rely on is important. Despite the difficulty, standing up for justice is paramount." Elaine retrieved additional coffee along with freshly baked cinnamon buns. Dispersed in tiny groups, the veterans gathered around, some perched on their bikes, all prepared to tell tales of a fallen brother and his son. Now that the morning sun had completely burned away the mountain mist, a scene had emerged that no one could have foreseen even a few hours ago. Reconciliation was taking root in places where violence had erupted as a danger. Just like it had for the past 15 years, the coffee stand remained a community hub. It was only recently that that community had experienced surprising growth. Knowing that the greatest wins do not often come from vanquishing an opponent, but from healing a shattered heart, Frank smiled as he watched Rex lean forward to hear Mac's first narrative about James Dawson. The number of veterans visiting Frank's coffee stand increased as the morning wore on into the afternoon. Rex sat there, soaking up every word, occasionally wiping tears from his eyes, as each one shared a story about James Dawson. He carried the silver lighter at all times. Veteran Pete was describing your dad's personality. He had a way of lifting our spirits even in the darkest of times with his quick wit and jokes. Does the monsoon period come to mind, Frank? While he was constructing the water collecting apparatus out of that tarp. Frank poured additional coffee while nodding. That rainfall fed the entire unit for 3 days. Jimmy was concerned about more than just himself. Though he had identified himself as Danny, the young Cobra member with the snake tattoo hesitated to speak. With regard to Tom's hardware store, Mr. Harper. I broke all of his windows. Let me take care of it. Because it is necessary, and not merely because it is the law. After chatting with other veterans on the radio, Iron Mom looked over to Danny. Son, apart from graffiti, what is your background? Danny became red-faced. It took 4 years to build, ma'am. I am an expert in renovating storefronts. I make no secret of the irony. Skillfully done, she gave a nod. It could be useful for us. It's not just the windows at Tom's apartment that require fixing. VMA is planning a full refurbishment. Would you like to be the project manager for that? Danny was taken aback. Am I? However, I am not. Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people. Mac interjected, noting that redemption isn't limited to apologizing. What matters are deeds. Making use of your abilities to construct rather than destroy. There's strength in that. As Frank shared another shot, Rex glanced up. Every member of the gang is going to pitch in. According to him, it's not up for discussion, as he glanced about at his surviving members. No one protested. Elaine cheerfully hung up her phone after finishing her own call. Get in touch with Tom. He's ready to give you guys another shot if you promise to fix things. Indicates that he may have available positions if you are truly committed to making a change. That's more than we deserve, Rex whispered. Frank retorted that deserves had nothing to do with it. I learned that from your father. I felt sorry for myself after my 1969 crash. I felt like I deserved to die in that place. For the entire night, Jimmy and I talked about forgiveness. About the opportunities that life presents for rebuilding. We learn from our mistakes, not because we're deserving of them. Entering the parking lot was a brand new motorbike. Officer Rodriguez from the County Sheriff's Department. Iron Mom raised a hand as the Cobra members stiffened up. Don't worry, he's just like the rest of us. 3rd Infantry, Desert Storm. Rodriguez got off his horse and took off his helmet, exposing his worn face and graying hair. He took in the scene, ex-gang members chatting over coffee and swapping anecdotes. As he walked up to Frank's counter, he announced that he had some complaints regarding a commotion above. It appears more like a reunion, though, based on what I can see. Frank, who was slipping a coffee cup toward the police, said that it was more like a reconciliation. Who can forget James Dawson? Rodriguez's expression brightened. Everyone remembers Jimmy from Quezon. At last, it clicked. He shifted his attention to Rex. Aren't you his little boy? Is that how you carry yourself? Rex, who was speechless, could only nod. Iron Mom told Rodriguez that they are trying to make things right. First up, we have Tom's hardware store. These lads are exchanging their tool belts for Cobra patches. As he sipped his coffee, Rodriguez thought about this. Being a former soldier, Tom is a decent man. If he's open to giving you a go, I'll support his play. Turning to Rex, he stepped out of line just a little. No, sir, Rex stated coldly. All of that is now behind us. I only wish to pay tribute to my father's memories. Bring pride to him by doing something. Rodriguez then pulled out a notepad and said, then we can begin with the paperwork. Please provide me with statements regarding each company that you have harassed. We must confront our past in order to move forward. Rex and the other gang members gave a detailed account of their activities over the following hour. Upon the arrival of the veterans, some serpents had already scampered away, but the remaining ones spared no effort. Rodriguez listened to their remarks with a serious expression and an understanding look in his eyes. At the same time, Iron Mom had formed squads out of the veterans. Some might be useful for Tom's shop makeover. Some would approach other companies that had been scared by the serpents. Mac had previously organized a community fundraiser to assist with the expenses. Community was important to your father. Frank informed Rex just as the youth completed his remarks. Compared it to a motorbike, they claimed. A lot of moving pieces. Each one is significant. They were all necessary to maintain efficiency. While he and a few of the veterans were making rough designs for a restoration, Danny glanced up. Also, wouldn't we be able to do that? Put our bikes to good use. From what I've heard, motorcycle clubs often participate in community service projects like parades and charity races. Mom Iron grinned. Now you're considering. The month of March will see VMA's toy run. Helping families in need by collecting Christmas gifts for veterans. Could need a couple more bicycles. The parking lot had undergone an astonishing makeover. A few short hours ago, there was friction and the possibility of physical altercation. Finally, preparation had a goal. Even though the scarlet serpents were on their last legs, a new species was emerging. Sandwiches were brought out by Elaine. The neighborhood deli was summoned by her to bring lunch to all of them. Additional anecdotes were shared as the meal was passed around. Veterans spoke about James Dawson's courage, but also about their own experiences with PTSD and finding meaning in assisting others. Rex would have been thrilled with this, Frank whispered to him. Seeing individuals overcome their differences and find solace in one another. He battled for that. Rex glanced across at the silver lighter before turning to the assembled multitude. Breaking bread together, former rivals plotted how to put the pieces back together. Not merely structures, but also confidence, admiration, and camaraderie. It's been a long time since I was upset, he apologized. This became easier to handle once Mom passed away. After hearing these stories, I finally understood my father, even though I had always assumed that being tough meant intimidating people. Rex felt Frank's hand resting on his shoulder. There is a wide variety of strengths. His heart belonged to your father. The power to unite people and encourage them rather than condemn them. You possess that same strength as well. I have only been patiently waiting for it to go out. As Officer Rodriguez concluded taking statements, the parking area was bathed in lengthy shadows caused by the afternoon sun. He glanced at Rex with a compassionate yet firm expression as he put down his notepad. I believe we can resolve this without filing official charges, considering the circumstances and Tom's willingness to do so in private. However, he stopped and looked at every ex-Cobra member. Get this chance while you can. Use it wisely. We will, Rex said with a stern tone. Frank kept a picnic table outside his stand, and Mac began today to set out a large map on it. As they plotted out their neighborhood restoration initiatives, veterans and ex-serpents gathered around it, making mental notes of which businesses they needed to visit. Iron Mom was circling the location, claiming that Tom's hardware store is priority. You mentioned being able to lead that renovation, Danny. An enthusiastic nod was given by Danny. Indeed, I have been jotting down some concepts, ma'am. An old, crumpled sheet of paper covered in intricate artwork was produced by him. Rebuilding the storefront from the ground up is necessary, but we may improve upon its current state. Perhaps a covered area might be added for loading in inclement weather. Very well reasoned, Mac gave permission. Tom is older now than he was back then. The loading space would be very useful to him. Elaine broke her long silence and started talking all of a sudden. Do you recall, Dad, the shed that was located behind the stand? Can you remember which one contained all of your discarded construction materials? Smiling, Frank said. My darling, I'm already planning that. With those supplies, Tom might begin his refurbishment immediately. Iron Mom looked around at the other members of the Cobra. Just how many of you are good at things other than making people feel afraid? They raised their voices one by one. In addition to Danny's background in construction, the gang had a plumber, 2 ex-mechanics, and an electrician, talents that they had forsaken in favor of the illusion of power that gang life offered. Good, Iron Mom gave a subtle nod. We won't stop at mending what you damaged. We're here to improve it. Rex, whose attention had been fixed on the map, indicated several spots. We didn't hurt these companies, but we intimidated and frightened them. That is also something that needs fixing. Frank replied that the first step is to admit when you're incorrect. The journey is to make it right. Mike, a veteran who had been using his phone to coordinate with other VMA chapters, decided to join the group. Good news arrived. Materials, tools, and supplies from 3 different states are being sent to us. We expect them to arrive by morning. It's fantastic, Danny remarked. And then he paused. However, how will we keep everything? There is still no security at the hardware store. Elaine and Frank locked eyes, and Elaine nodded. She extended an offer for the warehouse beside my house. It is now vacant as Tom relocated his surplus inventory. An ideal command center would be housed there. Center of command, Rex whispered as he ran his hand over his father's lighter. The word would have been preferred by Dad. You two require a rebranding, Iron Mom interrupted, bringing up the subject of terminology. You can't continue to be known as the Scarlet Serpents while collaborating with the VMA. The ex-gang members exchanged nervous glances. The first person to speak was Danny. Where do Dawson's soldiers stand? So as to pay tribute to Rex's father? Perhaps every single veteran as well. For a brief instant, the suggestion lingered. Rex couldn't hold back his tears any longer, he let them fall freely. Is that all right? Danny added hastily. No way, we'd have to prove ourselves worthy of it. Danny was tapped on the shoulder by Mac. You deserve to use it because you want to earn it, son. Frank quietly enjoyed watching the scene play out. There was more to the coffee kiosk than meets the eye. There was healing and gathering there. That was more evident than ever before today. Officer Rodriguez, who had been acting independently, returned to the rest of the crew. Just had a conversation with the mayor. We have the full support of the city council for the rehabilitation project. The idea of a community-wide endeavor has been floated. Everyone seems sick and tired of being afraid. Frank pondered the trade-off between respect and fear. Rex, your dad would bring that up. The aforementioned dread drives a wedge between people, while consideration brings them together. Behind the counter, Elaine had been occupied with something. She came out clutching a big thermos and a number of mugs. She announced that it was Dad's secret blend. He saves it for important events. A subtle scent of coffee permeated the air as she poured it, lifting everyone's spirits even further. Something new had changed in the air, yet the veterans and ex-gang members kept plodding. Feelings of purpose, optimism, and the knowledge that something remarkable was progressing. Danny cautiously approached Frank, Mr. Harper. I mean, you might think you could give us some coffee 101. At some point, we should probably figure out how to run our own stand so that other veterans have somewhere to congregate. Frank gave the young man a serious look. A sincere wish to change had replaced the wrath and fake swagger of earlier. He had already informed Rex's father of the same thing. There's more to coffee than just water and beans. It's all about making room for people to come together and heal. Already, Iron Mom was jotting down notes. You might join a group of coffee shops managed by veterans who appreciate service and sacrifice as part of the VMA's Veteran Support Program. The afternoon passed with the plans still in the works. What began as an altercation was quickly turning into something completely unexpected for all of them. The former serpents listened with increasing respect and understanding as the veterans began to relate additional anecdotes about James Dawson and their own experiences. Do you realize the feeling this evokes in me? Frank, Max whispered softly. Do you recall what Jimmy said that night in Quezon when he rallied the entire unit following our losses of Thompson and Martinez? Francis gave Frank a subtle nod. Neither of us is a Marine, sailor, or airman tonight, he said. For the night, we're simply brothers, supporting one another. Rex murmured an addition. Isn't that our purpose here? Supporting one another? Frank assured his kid that they were indeed doing that. That is just the kind of thing your dad would have preferred. No one appeared particularly motivated to depart as the sun started to sink below the mountains. Many things remained to be accomplished, including making plans, sharing tales, and healing. As it had for the past 15 years, the coffee shop remained a symbol of solidarity and optimism. Looking around at the strange conglomeration of people, veterans and ex-gang members, police officers and civilians, all bound together in purpose, Frank sensed that this was the start of something extraordinary. Incredible bustle erupted at Frank's coffee stand as dusk descended over the mountains and the sky revealed its first stars. Gathered around makeshift planning stations, Iron Mom had turned the parking area into an impromptu command center, complete with veterans and former Cobra members. She asked Danny to go over the timeline for renovating the hardware store with her once more while she spread out his drawings on the motorcycle's hood. The first step is to install the security system, new windows, and doors, so yes, ma'am. 2 days have passed. The next step, structural repairs, should be completed in approximately 1 week. Afterwards, we will refill and renovate the inside. With consistent effort, we can complete the task in 3 weeks. With an interjection, Rex made it too. That much is due to Tom. Should the need arise, we are able to work in shifts continuously. While making a new pot of coffee, Frank had been listening and decided to speak out. There has been a steady worsening of Tom's arthritis. Perhaps you might think about making some adjustments to make it more accessible at the same time. Danny was very pleased. To be honest, I had a thought on that. On new paper, he drew hastily. We can set up a system that takes inventory automatically. Connected to a tablet, motion sensors monitor inventory levels. No longer would Tom be compelled to scale ladders in order to inspect stock. Elaine appeared astonished as she had been contacting nearby vendors. How did you become familiar with such systems? Anger flushed Danny's cheeks. I used to be an engineering student. That is, prior to associating with bad people. Abandoned my degree pursuits. Mac said it was never too late to complete. For veterans and their families, VMA offers a program that supports education. Could provide some assistance with it. Officer Rodriguez, who remained to assist with community response coordination, also mentioned that the county had programs. Individuals seeking a fresh start can apply for educational funding and job training programs. Several automobiles pulled up and cut off the discussion. Local merchants who had heard rumblings about Frank's stall started showing up. Mrs. Chen, who worked at the nearby Chinese restaurant, was one of them. She yelled out to Mr. Harper, who was hauling heavy canisters. It is my intention to bring you food. Not able to make plans when not eating. As the scent of coffee blended with that of her renowned dumplings, a delightful combination of aromas wafted through the air. Additional people of the community showed up, bringing food, beverages, and offers of assistance. Incredulous, Rex observed the thronging onlookers. Even after everything we did to them, these communities are stronger than terror, my son, Frank remarked. Your dad knew that, and that's why he battled so hard to keep it safe. Despite her diminutive stature, Mrs. Chen made her way straight up to Rex. Last week, you guys scared my granddaughter to tears. The shameful Rex lowered his head. My deepest apologies, Mrs. Chen. Hey, you want to make something? We were. She broke the silence. Additional delivery drivers are required for my eatery. Salary is competitive, and working hours are customizable. Not as bad as terrifying kids, is it? Just as Rex was about to answer, Danny advanced. It would be our honor, ma'am. However, it's possible that we could provide more. The wheelchair ramp at your restaurant is in bad need of repair, I saw that. We can take care of that. Ensure the safety of your older clients. A little smile crept onto Mrs. Chen's face. I thought you were a builder. Thank you, ma'am. Also, we'd want to be of service. As a group. Iron Mom, who had been observing the conversation, looked across at Mac. Presumably, we have just discovered our second project, following Tom's store. As further members of the community showed there, the preparations went on. Various groups got together to meet diverse needs, turning the parking lot into a bustling center of activity. When the ex-serpents let their guard down, they showed that they were competent craftsmen ready to make amends. A huge whiteboard was used by Elaine to begin a list. Repair initiatives for local communities. She then scribbled, Tom's hardware store renovation, below it. Next, the renovations to Mrs. Chen's eatery. Thirdly, enhancements to the community center. Finally, a network of resources for families of veterans. Iron Mom pondered the need for coordination. Everyone has to focus on one thing at a time. Offering assistance in a low voice, I can assist with that. Lisa, Rex's younger sister, had heard what was going on and come running. At the River Creek IT company, I oversee many projects. Years of experience in this type of coordination. After months of silence, Rex finally looked over at his sister. Lisa, I interrupted him with an embrace. Discovering your path would make Mom proud. And Dad as well. Serving coffee to an ever-increasing gathering, Frank saw the siblings' reunion. There was now more going on at the stand than merely a gathering spot. A community renaissance was taking place there. Curling up his sleeve was a little girl. Jenny, who was Grandma Chen's grandchild, was there. May I be of service to you, Mr. Harper, in making coffee orders? According to Mama, it's good to assist those who assist other people. In reminiscence of another little girl who had volunteered to assist out at his kiosk, Frank grinned. I agree with your Mama. Behold, I will demonstrate the precise technique for pouring it. It's important to serve coffee with care, you know. Does wonders for the flavor. With Jenny's careful instruction, more arrangements were being arranged for the coffee pot. With the same ferocity they had when intimidating, the ex-serpents dove headfirst into the planning process, while local companies pledged their support and veterans of the VMA organized work crews. Just as dusk was falling, Tom himself showed up. The sound of his weathered vehicle squeaking into the lot. Despite the tension among the ex-serpents, the proprietor of the hardware store approached Rex without hesitation. According to his rough words, he had heard that you guys wanted to fix things. Yes, sir, above anything else. Tom gently gave a nod. I worked my way up through the ranks of hardware stores for close to 30 years. I figured you might as well figure out how to run my shop properly if you're going to rebuild it. Rex was taken aback. Old age, sir, he told them. Where can I find some extra glass sheets and containers, Tom? Tom nodded. Nonetheless, they may need to restock their previous supplies, as he had joined them with a blend of cautious hope. Danny reassured him that we will repaint the storefront sign and find a way to make it work. A friendlier, more cheerful item. Rex, with the help of Iron Mom and Frank, practiced his speech for the municipal council meeting at the coffee stand. The veteran's constant words of support eased his apparent anxiety. "Keep in mind," Iron Mom emphasized in a firm yet encouraging voice. "I don't need anyone's approval for this. What this community is capable of accomplishing when its members work together will be demonstrated to the council. Express your true feelings." Rex reassured himself by nodding and clutching the lighter in his pocket. "My only goal is to honor my dad and you guys." Then, when Frank patted him on the shoulder, he conceded that he had already won half the war. Midway through the morning, the group started to assemble at the municipal council building, the designated site for the meeting. Packed into the cramped chamber were eager citizens, company owners, and council members, all waiting to hear the plans. Iron Mom, Lisa, and Tom stood on either side of Rex as he stood at the head of the room. He felt as if he were in a dream. This man has stood before the community's authorities to make apologies after once terrorizing them as the head of a gang. With a firm voice belying his nervousness, Rex started by saying good morning. "Hello, I am Rex Dawson. I am Fawn, the Scarlet Serpent's leader, which some of you may recognize. I will not make excuses or pretend that I am proud of my past actions, rather, I am here today to try to put things right." The audience grew hushed as Rex proceeded to detail the strategies for reopening Tom's hardware store, fixing up Mrs. Chen's eatery, and enlarging the community center. He discussed how the veterans were actively involved, how local companies were supportive, and how the activities were driven by a revitalized sense of purpose. Rex summed up by saying that they aren't seeking funding. "We are requesting confidence. People can change, and communities can heal, let us prove it to you. And if we work together, we can fortify this community to an unprecedented degree." The members of the council looked at each other, their doubts about Rex's honesty beginning to fade. The audience went wild when Tom came up to support the proposals and spoke about his hope for the future of the community. A surge of pride and comfort washed over Rex as they departed from the conference. His prediction to Iron Mom was that they would approve. "It would be foolish of them not to," she responded with an unusual grin. "It is time to return to our task." Moving forward, we spent the remainder of the day. Danny took the lead in evaluating the kitchen's requirements and fixing the wheelchair ramp at Mrs. Chen's restaurant. Bystanders couldn't help but smile as they witnessed former serpents collaborating with veterans and members of the neighborhood. As he poured coffee to passers-by and related tales of the town's evolution, Frank ran the coffee stand. More and more people heard about the situation and showed up to provide a hand, bringing food, equipment, and even baked goodies to keep the workers going. The advancement was plain to see as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the mountains in a comforting radiance. New windows and primer adorned Tom's hardware store. The community center was planned and almost finished by Mrs. Chen. After what seemed like an eternity, the town finally sensed a renewed sense of optimism and potential. Everything revolved on Frank's coffee stand, a modest but potent symbol of the potential that existed when individuals banded together. By the time the sun came up the following day, Frank's coffee stand parking lot was jam-packed. The Veterans Motorcycle Association and other area vendors rallied behind the idea, and soon enough, trucks laden with construction supplies started rolling in. Hammers, saws, and enthusiastic voices filled the air. Standing next to Danny at Tom's hardware store, Rex, who was now completely absorbed in his position, examined the revised designs. Beyond making necessary repairs, the team had opted to incorporate ideas for a contemporary renovation that would focus on the community. According to Danny, who was pointing to a drawing, the new layout will make it easier for customers to find what they're looking for. Wider aisles will be added for accessibility, and the outdoor loading area is already taking shape. Rex nodded in agreement. "And we're keeping the original science frame. Tom mentioned that his dad built it by hand. We'll just update the lettering." Tom, who was standing close, grinned affectionately. "This would have been perfect for my grandpa." A hardware store, in his opinion, should be comfortable and inviting while yet serving practical needs. The group was already hard at work when Lisa showed up, and her organizing abilities were a huge help. She circulated amongst the desks to check in on progress and make sure everyone was aware of their responsibilities. In a non-committal manner, Tom shrugged. He had been seeking a mentor who might teach him the value of perseverance and seeking justice. Am I of interest? The change in Rex's countenance was astounding. There was now optimism where there had been humiliation. Where rage had burned, now there was determination. Frustrated, Frank slightly increased his voice. It's coffee time, everyone. And if my recollection serves me well, Tom here has the most fascinating tales about the town's history. Do you think those stories could teach us anything about community building? The night air was thick with anticipation as people sat down to coffee and chatted, ideas, and potential all about. As an extraordinary event unfolded at a humble coffee kiosk situated on a winding mountain road, the surrounding mountains observed in silence. The mountains were shrouded in darkness, yet Frank's coffee station remained illuminated like a beacon. It had gone from a planning meeting to a community celebration by the time someone had strung up work lights all over the parking lot. As he sat at the counter, Tom told Rex and Danny about his plans for the future of the hardware business. According to him, a tool rental service has been on his mind. Many locals just do not have the means to purchase pricey tools that they will only use seldom. Danny quickly sketched out the idea of a workshop area that we might also establish. Offer basic home repair classes and consider forming a partnership with the local high school to provide vocational training. Lisa, who happens to be Rex's sister, was rapidly entering their concepts into her laptop. In her opinion, the community center would be a good place to coordinate everything. Lay the groundwork for a system of services, education, and employment possibilities. Iron Mom, who was listening in on the discussion, got up from her seat. When it came to training and mentorship, VMAs had members with every conceivable skill set and could organize them on a regular basis. Tom employed technology to improve people's lives. Never before had I considered my store in that light. Jimmy always said tools were just a way to build bridges between people, Frank added as he refilled their coffee cups. I take it both literally and metaphorically. Rex hesitated when his father was brought up. Once more, he retrieved the silver lighter and examined it under the fluorescent lamp. Whenever something broke around the house, Dad would fix it. Do not ever contact a repairman. Added that mending things yourself was something to be proud of. Repeating quietly, Frank took pride in repairing things. Isn't that our purpose here? Resolving issues beyond just structures. After a period of silently listening while she passed out additional dumplings, Mrs. Chen finally spoke up. Not only the ramp, but my entire eatery needs fixing. We have no money for major renovations, but the kitchen and dining room both require new appliances. Rex and Danny exchanged glances. What if we assisted you in updating? Danny asked. Ma'am. Revamp the dining room and create a more functional kitchen. Partially completing the task is possible. Minimize disturbance. She went on to say that Elaine knew people who supplied restaurants. They might likely offer attractive deals on equipment. Madam Chen's pupils grew dilated. The question is, how much? She was reassured by Iron Mom that we will work it out. Collecting funds for the community, carrying out voluntary work, and donating materials. Anything is achievable when individuals collaborate. Officer Rodriguez, who had increased his call volume, returned to the squad. I just finished talking to the mayor on the phone once more. An emergency meeting will be called by the city council tomorrow morning. Community improvement plans are what they are interested in hearing about. Rex cautiously inquired about all of them. Rodriguez corrected everyone. Everyone participating is encouraged to share their thoughts. Everyone from the ex-serpents to the veterans and company owners. The formation of a community repair program is being discussed. As Frank observed, the news just served to energize the audience more. Plans that had begun as minor fixes were becoming into something substantially more substantial. The radical change of an entire neighborhood. The granddaughter of Mrs. Chen, Jenny, had dozed off on a picnic chair while holding an empty coffee cup that she had been using for practice. As she smiled at Frank, her mother hit her with a jacket. She recently expressed her desire to learn how to make coffee. She expresses a desire to emulate your work in bringing people together. Even though the night descended further, nobody appeared ready to depart. As individuals walked between working groups, exchanging ideas and building connections, the work lights created lengthy shadows. Just hours before they had terrorized the neighborhood, the ex-serpents were already plotting their return. While working on her laptop, Lisa had meticulously planned out a spreadsheet that would serve as a resource and timetable forecast. She said that the first phase can be finished in a month if we work together well. The community center's standard layout, Tom's shop, and Mrs. Chen's restaurant. Where do we leave the other companies we damaged? With some hesitation, one of the ex-serpents inquired. Without hesitating, Lisa responded to phase 2. We'll take stock of everything and set priorities according to what's most pressing and what we have on hand. Everyone is included. Plus, there was more positive news from Mac, who had been in touch with other VMA chapters to coordinate. A total of 5 states worth of chapters are eager to pitch in. They're setting up teams of volunteers and supply runs. We had no idea this would grow into something so significant. As a matter of habit, Frank wiped down his counter and noted that this is how change occurs. Like ripples in a pond, it begins with a small step and then spreads. Rex abruptly sprang to his feet, his expression grave. Excuse me, Mr. Harper, but I would like to address the entire group. Iron Mom immediately captured everyone's attention once Frank nodded. As Rex coughed, everyone in the parking lot went silent. The speaker started, their voice quivering but steadily rising, that they had been contemplating their father throughout the day. I tried to be strong for a long time, dishonoring everything he stood for, after hearing your stories about him and his true character. However, he took a moment to survey the assembled faces today. I learned now what true strength is. The focus should be on uniting people, on building instead of tearing down. Neither fear nor power should be there. The silver lighter he was holding caught the light from the office lights as he raised it. I had no idea what this meant until now, yet it was his legacy. Looking at it brought back memories of home and family as well as the cause he was fighting for. Even while we may not be armed, we are all fighting for something today, with knowledge, abilities, and faith. After that, there was a tremendous stillness. Next, Mrs. Chen got to her feet. Even in my own eatery, you guys gave me the creeps. But now you give me hope, she said with a smile. Wishes for the future of my company, my granddaughter, and our neighborhood. Others rose to their feet and spoke in turn. People in the business world expressing their aspirations, veterans providing emotional support, and ex-gang members promising to make amends. The night was alive with the sounds of those who had been driven apart by terror but were now bound together by a common goal. As he served coffee to customers, Frank observed the change unfold before his eyes. A cup of coffee, an exchange of stories, or an offer of forgiveness can sometimes be the catalyst for the greatest transformations. At a small coffee shop on a winding road, a community started to mend and rebuild itself, one pledge at a time, as the mountains watched in silence. As the sun rose over the mountains, it illuminated Frank's coffee stand parking lot with a warm, golden light. Some influential people had returned early from the late night of planning, energized by the newfound momentum of their cause. Infusing the cool morning air with the comforting perfume of home, Frank had already begun brewing his particular blend. Along with their toolboxes and rolled-up blueprints, Danny and Rex showed up. Stepping out of his truck and surveying the scene, Rex appeared more determined than ever, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Greeting you with a smile, Mr. Harper, Danny said good morning. It's time to begin. With a chuckle, Frank poured 2 hot cups of coffee. Get up and at 'em early, lads, there's a lot to accomplish before the city council meeting, so that's a plus. With his father's lighter securely tucked into his pocket, Rex took a long breath. It's not only about repairing structures, Mr. Harper, it's also about mending the trust that we shattered. Every single individual we've harmed needs an apology, and we need to deliver them one by one. A nod of approval came from Frank. Well done, my son. Saying you're sorry isn't enough, doing something about it is. Make it right by doing more than just talking about it. Lisa pulled into the parking lot before they could go any further into their conversation. Her face betrayed her intense concentration as she carried laptop bags over her shoulder. Good morning, gentlemen, she said with a rush. I've planned out the day's schedule for us. In addition to coordinating with the out-of-town veterans, we must complete the pitch for the city council and verify the status of Tom's hardware shop repairs. Also, Danny reminded everyone to remember Mrs. Chen's ramp. Our pledge to begin that today was kept. Using her tablet, Lisa tapped. Considered, nevertheless, in order to maintain momentum, we will have to form separate squads. After, Iron Mom rode up on a motorcycle with a handful of other veterans. Their configuration commanded respect and quiet adoration as they parked. She ascended and descended with the grace of an expert. All right, everyone, she said. I say we start right now. Danny, the hardware shop team is under your leadership. Rex, I'll be presenting before the municipal council with your help. Now that you've mastered logistics, Lisa, we can get moving. There was a deluge of activity throughout the morning. After the earlier rampage by the serpents, Danny and his team went to Tom's hardware business to evaluate the damage. The devastation was evident from the shattered doorframe, graffiti-covered walls, and broken windows. However, when he rallied the team, Danny's resolve shone through. The windows will be our first target. Just a friendly reminder, she mentioned that we should aim to get the storefront ready for the ribbon cutting this weekend. The town's restoration initiative is set to begin with this, according to the council. A parallel incident was taking place at Mrs. Chen's eatery. In order to modernize the kitchen and refresh the dining area, a group of ex-serpents and veterans collaborated. Mrs. Chen hurried from one task to another, providing snacks to the employees and ensuring everything was running well. How fast this is coming together is unbelievable to me. As Danny painstakingly set up a new stove, Mrs. Chen watched in awe. You guys are really rocking this. Danny wiped perspiration from his forehead and smiled. It feels nice to construct something instead of ripping it down, ma'am, and we have a lot of ground to cover. Frank stopped by each location to bring coffee and encouraging comments. Not only were the buildings changing, but so were the people he encountered at each stop. As they became a part of something greater than themselves, the previously unseen distant serpents began to open up and work together with newfound purpose and camaraderie, their once sharp edges beginning to smooth over. Elaine had arranged a donation station at the coffee stand, where concerned citizens could drop off money and items. Additionally, by midday, the sign-up form for volunteers had been organized by her. Elaine asked her father, Frank Porter, is this a new cup of coffee? Something monumental is developing here. A lot of people are banding together. A look of pride flashed across Frank's face as he grinned. When people come to the realization that they are stronger when united, incredible things can happen. This town, according to your mom, has good bones, all it needs is some TLC to become a vibrant community again. Impressive forward momentum was maintained throughout the day. With the first coat of paint drying on Tom's hardware store, the new wheelchair ramp at Mrs. Chen's restaurant was finished by late afternoon. The squad of veterans and ex-serpents worked well together, and their combined abilities were crucial. Mom Iron, who was in charge of all the projects, decided to take a break. Everyone, please stand. A little break will do us good. Frank and Elaine had prepared tables at the coffee stand with cookies, sandwiches, and coffee, so the workers gathered there. The mood was carefree, with lots of laughter and friendship. Rex looked around at the gathering and stated, "I never thought I'd be sitting here with all of you. It feels like I've finally found my place after being a very different, angry, and confused person a year ago. A sense of belonging must be worked for, as Iron Mom once said. This is her most subdued voice. You have made significant progress in achieving it. You should be proud of your dad." Rex couldn't help but crack a bittersweet smile at the thought of his father. He displayed the silver lighter. "Now I take this with me wherever I go. Both his life and my own aspirations are brought to mind by it." The teams came back to work after the break with renewed vigor and a will to succeed. The more seasoned employees kept mentoring the newer ones and passing on their knowledge and experience. As a result, the ex-serpents put in more time and effort than ever before, determined to earn back the faith that had been put in them. The outside of the hardware shop was almost finished by the time night fell. A new sign had been put over the entrance, and the freshly painted walls shimmered in the warm sunshine. On the inside, the new arrangement was taking form as shelves were refilled. A similar metamorphosis was approaching Mrs. Chen's eatery. The dining room got new paint in bright hues, and the kitchen remodel was completed. After hearing the suggestion of one of the veterans, Mrs. Chen even installed a little blackboard wall where the children could play. At Frank's coffee stand, the workers reconvened as the sun set below the mountains, taking stock of the day's achievements. Although there was still a lot of work to be done, the progress had been made. Toasting with a cup of coffee, Frank lifted it up. "The road ahead is still long, but I've never been prouder of all of you, thanks to perseverance, second chances, and this town." Cheers resounded across the slopes as the company raised their drinks in perfect harmony. The connections that had been established over those arduous workdays were becoming stronger, laying the groundwork for an improved future. Looking out at the faces of the veterans, ex-gang members, and locals gathered around him as the stars filled the night sky, Frank felt an overwhelming feeling of thankfulness. What began as a small act of resistance to dread has blossomed into something monumental. The community seemed revitalized and the skies were clear the morning of the ribbon-cutting event. The hardware store was all smiles after getting a new coat of paint and getting a sign that paid homage to Rex's dad, Dawson's Tools and Supply. The entrance was adorned with ribbons of various colors, ready to be cut, red, white, and blue. As more and more people flocked to the door to see the spectacle, Rex paced anxiously nearby. Local business owners, families, and veterans crowded the room, all abuzz with excitement about the transformation taking place in their hometown. Kids were out and about, too, their joyous antics a sharp contrast to the gravity of the situation that had previously settled over the community. Along with Elaine, Frank showed up with a box of warm, freshly baked cookies to distribute to everyone. Rex was given a hot cup of coffee as he paused next to him. "Calm down, kid," Frank reassured with a friendly grin. "The shop isn't the only thing here. Let us demonstrate to all what is achievable when we unite." The comforting aroma of Frank's coffee let Rex take a deep breath and relax. "Doing my dad proud is all I want." Frank gave the impression that you had previously done so. "We should formally announce it now." Rex was joined by Iron Mom and Lisa, who were prepared to begin the event. As her voice resounded across the throng, Lisa touched the microphone placed near the door. "Salutations, all." She started, and the listeners were captivated by her self-assured voice. Not only is Dawson's Tools and Supply reopening today, but this community's strength and perseverance are also being celebrated. The commitment of many individuals, veterans, volunteers, and even those looking for second chances, was crucial to the success of this endeavor. The mountains resounded with the ovation of the spectators. With a motion toward Rex, Lisa passed the microphone to him. The lighter in Rex's pocket grew tighter as he paused. He struggled to find his words at first, but then he saw the encouraging faces in front of him. His tone remained strong as he started to say, "Thank you," even though he was visibly overwhelmed by emotion. "This shop is about so much more than that. What my father stood for is symbolized by it. Honesty, standing by one's community, and working hard are all important. That was always confusing to me, but now I get it, because of you all. Tom, Danny, and the veterans who had toiled away to make this moment a reality caught his eye, and he glanced up briefly. This goes beyond mending existing damage. Together, we can build something better. Furthermore, I assure you that I will not disappoint you. With a ceremonial pair of scissors in hand, Iron Mom advanced as the audience went wild with applause. Rex received them from her and then turned to Tom. Care to take the lead, sir? Without you, this store would be closed. As he steadied himself to hold the scissors, Tom grinned. The ribbon came tumbling down with a final cut, and the onlookers applauded. On the inside, the shop was a haven of friendliness and efficiency. Residents were enthralled with the new tool rental department, and the bigger aisles and improved shelving made it even more welcoming. Tom provided tours with a smile on his face, highlighting the team's and Danny's considerate touches. The weather outside became more cheerful as the day progressed. Mrs. Chen prepared dumplings at a table, while Elaine oversaw a bake sale to collect money for initiatives down the road. A short demonstration featuring woodworking and welding abilities was prepared by the veterans, who attracted inquisitive observers. Rex looked over the partygoers and saw a handful of ex-serpents hanging around the periphery. Rex motioned them over, despite the fact that their expressions revealed their uncertainty. With a forceful yet friendly tone, he told you that you are also a part of this. It all begins with turning up, we all have job to do. Before moving forward to join in the celebrations, the men glanced at each other. Hector, a young man among them, went up to Mrs. Chen and offered to assist with the food service. With a measured smile, Mrs. Chen expressed her gratitude. It's refreshing to see you guys lending a hand instead of causing trouble. As if in seriousness, Hector gave a nod. We're making an honest effort, ma'am. The party started to wind down as the sun went set in the sky. As Rex stood beside Frank's coffee stand, he overheard people chatting, laughing, and plotting their futures. Isn't it incredible? Joining him, Elaine spoke. This whole thing didn't seem conceivable even a short time ago. Rex gave a subtle nod, a subtle smile gliding across his lips. It's as if you've just woken up from a nightmare and realized you have another opportunity. When Frank saw them, he walked over and gave them a cup of his famous coffee. My son, it is the splendor of community. We can do anything if we stop putting each other down and start putting each other up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them sipped their coffee in easy silence, enjoying the warm light that cast a warm orange and gold hue over the mountains. As the light faded, they could make out the noises of equipment being used by veterans and volunteers who persisted on fixing Mrs. Chen's restaurant. It was a bittersweet time for Rex. His father's heritage and the man he was finally maturing into were on his mind. He experienced an overwhelming feeling of direction as he saw the flourishing neighborhood. We're just getting started, he whispered, speaking mostly to himself. As a proud expression spread across his face, Frank nodded. So it is, my son. We are that. With each passing day, the town's metamorphosis gathered steam. The revival of the hardware merchant's enthusiasm spread to every part of the town. Thanks to the dedication of volunteers of all ages, what were once insurmountable tasks became attainable objectives. The renovations at Mrs. Chen's restaurant were almost finished. The dining area was given a warm makeover with new paint and contemporary furnishings, while the recently installed kitchen appliances shone under the bright lighting. A mural, created by a group of local artists, showing a colorful mountain scene, served as the finishing touch. Mrs. Chen whispered a compliment as she ran her fingers over the shiny new countertop. I had no idea it would be this good. As Hector put in the last set of shelves, Rex stepped by and offered his assistance. He informed Mrs. Chen that it's not limited to her establishment. It's a little bit of this city. Everything we're doing is loving it. After remaining silent for the majority of the week, Hector finally spoke up. Seeing something damaged become something beautiful is gratifying. I never expected to like this kind of job. With gratitude evident in her eyes, Mrs. Chen smiled. You guys are rocking it. They would be very proud of you. Simultaneously, Frank's coffee stand persisted in being the center of fellowship and cooperation. It was a daily ritual for the employees to meet there, have coffee, and plot out their day. With more tables added by Frank and Elaine, the stand was bustling with activity as customers continued to pour in. Lisa had done an excellent job stepping into the shoes of project manager. With her trusty laptop and an infinite supply of post-it notes, she effortlessly managed multiple projects, deadlines, and budgets. During a morning meeting, she revealed that the repairs to the community center are ahead of schedule. The new flooring is expected to be installed by the end of the week, and the plumbing issue has been rectified. Danny, who had assumed the role of de facto project manager on many occasions, gave a knowing nod. Excellent, it implies we can reassign some workers to the playground adjacent. Over the years, it has been a source of public disgust. People in town took a shine to the playground project. The work became a joyful experience as families brought their children to assist with painting, hammering, and cleaning. Rex joined a group of children as they built a jungle gym out of brightly colored materials. Inquiringly, a small child tugged at Mr. Rex's sleeve and asked, "When things broke, were you always able to fix them?" Rex hesitated, taken aback by the unexpected inquiry. Occasionally, he conceded. My goal now is to improve upon my past performance, when I broke more things than I fixed. The young man gave a serious nod. My dad often believes that if you try, you'll succeed. Rex reassured the youngster, stroking his hair, that his father was an intelligent man. I agree with him. At the same time, Mac and Iron Mom were instrumental in working with nearby towns to acquire supplementary resources. Chapters of the Veterans Motorcycle Association from all across the area have gotten involved, contributing supplies, volunteers, and even money. Iron Mom clarified during strategy that this isn't limited to a single town. It's about demonstrating the power of unity. We're laying the groundwork for other towns to emulate. Thoughtful expression on Frank's face, he listened carefully. Hey, he mentioned that he's been considering transforming the coffee stand into a community hub, where people can relax, chat, and offer one another encouraging words. Elaine grinned. Your suggestion is brilliant, Dad. A little stage would be perfect for doing workshops or open mic nights, among other activities. Even Iron Mom acknowledged its promise. All of our efforts here are in keeping with this principle. As word spread, more and more volunteers volunteered to lend a hand with the expansion's planning and construction. Work started very immediately after plans were made, and Frank continued to oversee the process while pouring coffee to a constant flow of clients. The restoration efforts' effects became more and more apparent as time passed. The streets, which had been deserted for some time, suddenly seemed full of life as stores reopened, kids played around, and neighbors reconnected. Nearby towns and even local news agencies began to take notice of the village as a sign of perseverance. A news crew showed up at Frank's coffee stand one day to tape a segment about the makeover. Rex was one of numerous important people interviewed by the young woman with the friendly smile. Rex, she started, gesturing for a microphone. The Scarlet Serpents were a vicious gang that you previously led. They wreaked havoc on this community. How did this shift occur? The significance of the inquiry was evident in Rex's expression as he paused to gather his thoughts. He spoke in a steady voice, explaining that it all began with a single chat. I thought of my dad and all that he stood for and believed in when I saw Frank. After that talk, I decided to change for the better, both in terms of the harm I had done and the kind of person I had become. Ahead of them, he pointed to the flurry of activity. Not only is this the tale of my salvation, but it is also the story of a whole town banding together to show that problems can be solved at any time. The reporter seemed moved, as he or she nodded. And after this, Rex, what are your plans? The lighter in his pocket brought him comfort, and he grinned. Maintain constructing and lending a hand, and perhaps I will become the man my father always envisioned me to be. That night, the episode aired, capturing the attention of many and starting discussions about initiatives in other cities. The town's restoration fund received an overwhelming amount of supportive messages, offers of assistance, and contributions. Frank rounded together the core team, Rex, Danny, Lisa, Iron Mom, and Mac, at the coffee stand for some quiet reflection as the sun dipped below the horizon, marking the end of another productive day. Gathered around a modest fire pit, the friends sipped coffee and swapped tales. According to Mac, who spoke with a sense of pride, we have accomplished much, but this is only the start. Frank looked contemplative as he nodded. Rather of focusing on the physical structures or fixing them, we should be repairing the relationships, the trust, the respect, and the feeling of belonging. We are not going anywhere, Rex thought as he glanced around the gathering. A community celebration marked the end of the town's transformation and the beginning of a new chapter for all those involved. The fresh mountain air carried the sound of children's laughing as families flocked to the playground, which had just undergone renovations. Frank's coffee stand was the showpiece, with its enlarged area now housing a little stage decorated with dazzling lights. Volunteers were busy preparing food booths, activity stations, and a pictorial display showing the town's transformation from before to after. Photos depicted a moving tale of hope and solidarity healing fractured faces, overgrown lots into gardens, and lively businesses replacing broken windows. Rex got there early and helped get the chairs ready for the big show. He noticed Mrs. Chen supervising her employees at the restaurant's booth as he was working. She appeared happier than Rex had ever seen her before, and a line had already formed for her renowned dumplings. Tom, who owned a hardware store nearby, was excitedly talking to locals about their new rental program and forthcoming do-it-yourself courses. Holding a clipboard and confidently handling last-minute details, Danny lingered close. Lisa sat down with Rex, laptop stowed beneath her arm, and a mug of coffee in hand. Showcasing a hint of pride in her voice, she stated that everything is fitting together. Plus, we just got a call from the mayor's office. Sending a delegation to formally praise the restoration efforts is in their plans. And Rex grinned. I never expected it to be this much, but it's about more than just myself. All of this is justifiable for this town. Frank stepped up to the podium to make the opening comments as the party got underway. Wearing his go-to flannel shirt and flashing that familiar welcoming smile, he looked just like the pillar of the community he always has been. He started by addressing the distinguished audience with a steady and passionate voice. Hard labor, determination, and the unwavering faith that everything can be restored are the ingredients that have come together to form what you see before you today. He looked up for a moment, taking in Rex, Danny, and the dispersed veterans in the audience. Although it began as an effort to overcome fear, this has evolved into much more. When we put our differences aside and choose optimism over pessimism, it became a symbol of our potential. Over the mountains, the sound of the crowd's jubilation resounded. Frank was succeeded by Iron Mom, who discussed the involvement of the Veterans Motorcycle Association and their intentions to repeat the success in other areas once Frank stepped down. Residents, volunteers, and even ex-serpents who had made a full recovery encircled Rex as the talks went on. Grinning, Hector gave him a supportive clap on the back. According to Hector, we did good. In a world where I never imagined I'd say it, I'm proud of us. Rex, his throat constricted with emotion, nodded. Yes, I also. The team's appearance on stage to receive a plaque from the mayor's representative, a token of appreciation for their exceptional community leadership and commitment to healing and harmony, was the event's high point. The plaque was passed over while Rex stood behind Frank, Iron Mom, Lisa, Danny, and Mac. The enthusiasm in the crowd was palpable as they cheered passionately. Rex thanked the person speaking into the microphone, maintaining a steady voice while experiencing a lump in his throat. Everyone who ever stooped to smash an egg, cooked a meal, or had faith in a better world deserves a piece of this. This is dedicated to the town, my dad, and the future we are creating as a team. Music, dancing, and an overpowering feeling of euphoria persisted as the day drew to a close. Children recited poems, veterans shared memories, and Mrs. Chen surprised everyone with a touching song, all on tea. He tiny stage that had become a platform for local talent. With a feeling of contentment, Frank observed everything unfold from one of the tables where Elaine was seated. He spoke softly, saying that this was your mother's lifelong goal for this town. A haven where all people, regardless of their history, can flourish. Elaine gave him a firm squeeze. And it was all because of you, Dad. Once again, you restored their faith. Rex walked over with 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He then sat down and gave Frank one. According to Rex, I used to think that standing here today, I know that's not true. He went on to say that he had once believed that he couldn't do something positive. His shoulder was touched by Frank's hand. Forgiveness isn't about moving on from the past. Acquiring knowledge from it and utilizing it to mold a more favorable future is the essence. You are, in fact, doing that, my son. A last toast was taken by the assembled audience as the sky filled with stars. With an imposing and audible voice, Frank lifted his coffee cup to its rim. May we always be a unified force, dedicated to this town, its people, and the strength that comes from having another chance. Raising their drinks in harmony, the audience echoed his comments. Their jubilant cheers resounded throughout the night, marking a joyous occasion commemorating not just their achievements but also the strong relationships they had created. Rex gazed out at the faces around him as the lights shimmered above the coffee stand. Each one was a symbol of the power of community and the hope for salvation. A profound calmness washed over him as he realized this was but the start of better times to come. Like the community they protected, the mountains bore witness to everything that happened, serving as a constant reminder that hope and perseverance might triumph over adversity.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.